Hey everyone, this is Jack from the Cardboard Herald, and today we are taking a look at Rise of Tokugawa, the upcoming new expansion for one of my favorite surprise hits from 2020, Small Samurai Empires, a game of action selection and programming and area control in a really elegant weaving together that just makes a pristine, beautiful, concise experience. And it's a game that I have been eagerly looking forward to how it's going to get material in the future, which we have now. The future is now, but I should give a disclaimer that this expansion is still upcoming. The Kickstarter is up right now as I'm recording this, and thus all of the components, all of the rules themselves are subject to potential change, but as we'll see, it's pretty fleshed out right now. There are some things that are definitely going to be changing, evolving, upgrading by the time that it gets to a final version that gets to your door. So Rise of Tokugawa really gives you three primary sections of upgraditude to your Small Samurai Empires experience. The first being all of the components, the add-ons, the accoutrements that are necessary to make it a 5-player game. That includes beautiful Tokugawa little black meeples for a complete player complement. And then you also have an extended board. Yes, the existing archipelago is a little too cramped, a little too tight at 5 players, and so there's an extension, an add-on board that goes to the north of all the existing map, and that just functions exactly the same as you would play in the normal game. Which, speaking of which, you can play with the board extension in a 2 to 4 player game if you want, just like you can play with the black meeples if that's your preferred player color in a lower player count. Really, it's just giving you the accommodation of having the same experience but at a higher player count. And this aspect of the expansion is something that you're going to know if you want or you don't. Do you really like black as a player color? Do you want to be able to play at 5 players? Do you want a board that is less busy, less cramped, which I think at lower player counts just takes away from some of the pressure that you really want. At 4 players, it works perfectly fine. At 5 players, it's really necessary. At 2 and 3 players, I wouldn't play with the board extension, but if you want a less aggressive, more vacant, more Euro-y style game, then it functions well as making a less cramped board. Second, we have the training grounds, and this is probably what players in general have most been clamoring for, because when people think of area control in 2022, they're like, yo, this has got to have some sort of asymmetric powers in order to make my stuff different than your stuff, which was something that Small Samurai Empires never had. So the training grounds are a mat that each player gets, and as they place a token down for their desired action during the planning phase, then they can upgrade one of their soldiers into either an archer, gaining one of the 3 archers from the archer supply into the archer ready zone, or to an elite samurai, or they can take one of their archers or elite samurai and upgrade them into a general, their one and only general meeple. Now, all of these units are exactly one army. They are just as vulnerable as any other army. They are recruited just like any other army, so long as you have them in your ready, trained areas for those respective units. However, they do have different functions on the board. The archers have 2 strength while on a location containing an enemy's castle. They're able to besiege that castle, which gives them a little bit more oomph. And then the elite samurai each have a different power depending on which training grounds mat that you have. When you put it into play, it will resolve whatever effect. This could be pushing enemies out of the zone that it enters into, or being really combative and really severe, like being able to just immediately kill an enemy in an adjacent territory as soon as you put that samurai into play. And then, of course, there's the big bad wolves themselves, the generals. These are the super elite units. They all inherently have 2 power. They all can move 1 additional space when you're moving them, and they have some really tremendous power when they come into play, like rallying all the troops from another region, or immediately just sucking up all the resources from the region that they're put into, and then killing dudes just anywhere in the region. They are potent, they are severe, they are fearsome. In general, the training grounds are something that makes the game more strategic, it makes it more tactical, but it also makes it more complex. And there is a simple mechanical purity to the original Small Samurai Empires that I really love, that this takes it to a level of complexity above. So I like it, I find it interesting, I like the nuance and the tactical implications of it, but it does add a degree of complexity, and with that complication, that kind of undermines some of the pure Spartan egalitarian design of the original Small Samurai Empires. So I think this is a your mileage may vary type of thing. I don't think that it's a mandatory inclusion, but it's a nice thing to have for variety. And the third and most interesting and best and my favorite aspect of this expansion is that it adds a solo mode, a really great solo mode that gives all of the puzzly nuance and tactical consideration that Small Samurai Empires already has, but makes a really smooth and interesting automated opponent, rather two automated opponents that you're going to have to contend with. The system is really easy to work with. There's just an added board that goes along the side that functionally replaces the existing player action slots, giving you new selections that can be done using this board. Resolving a turn of one of the automated opponents is pretty simple. You have these location cards which are shuffled together. They're effectively tokens rather than cards. They're referred to as cards, but they're tokens because they're made out of thick, chunky chipboard. They show on the top what region they're going to correspond to. When it's their turn, you take one of these location tokens as well as one of the player action tokens, which the automated opponents don't use any of the movements, so the movement actions are all removed. Otherwise, they're all randomized. You put the action token and the location token into the appropriate space on the board, and then you don't resolve the action itself. You just look at the location, and that's going to prompt you to just populate within that region that automated player's units that go into the Bushido areas, or the food areas, or into the capital, or into the shrine areas. Basically, it's dictating where it needs units, and then the action, whenever it's resolved in normal action flow, as you play the normal game, is then going to prioritize where that action is going to take place. You do this for both opponents for the same number of actions that you would for a normal game playing with 3 players. You play your game exactly the same, and then you just play through the prioritization and resolving all the different actions that they have. Their game is a little bit different. They harvest in slightly different ways. They are going to prioritize killing or building castles in slightly different ways, but it's all easy to manage and it's all surprising and interesting, and you are playing the exact same game that you've always played, except once you develop a knack for it, you can start kind of prioritizing how to nullify potential actions that the automated opponents are going to do, which gives all the best notes of something like Spirit Island or Pax Pamir, where you're trying to think ahead and anticipate the potential outcomes of automa actions, which makes for an extremely satisfying puzzly game. Now, as a consequence of me liking the solo mode so much, there are some things that I would like to see come through in further development before this comes to retail release to take it from great and making it truly excellent. I'd like to see additional difficulty levels that kind of ratchet up the desperation you feel. I'd love to see some different scenarios or automa logic patterns that they have in order to give a little bit more variety if you play it again and again, because this is a solo mode that I anticipate playing a lot. And unlike Spirit Island or unlike the solo for something like Pax Pamir, which I think are somewhat good analogs, even if they are very different games, this game doesn't have the same variety from player powers or the sheer range of content from all kinds of different cards that can come up. So having some different behaviors would really go a long way to increase the variety if you wanted to dive into this again and again and again. So that is it. Those are 3 aspects of Rise of Tokugawa. Overall, as a fan of Small Samurai Empires, I really enjoy having this expansion. It gives me more ways to play this game, and of course, the solo mode just really knocked it out of the park, giving me just so much to think about and so much excitement to play it again and again. But I want to know from you, what do you think of the expansion so far? What do you think of Small Samurai Empires in general? And what are some of your favorite post-release solo mode implementations? Let us know in the comments below. As always, thanks for watching, thanks for supporting, thanks for being an awesome community. You've been great, and I've been Jack for the Cardboard Herald.